On today's episode of the CHGO Cubs podcast, we are just days away from the regular season opener, the Cubs and Dodgers in Japan. The Cubs are already there. We've got roster stuff to talk about and finishing off spring training when they're back. We'll talk about all of that and more on today's episode of the CHGO Cubs podcast. This is the CHGO Cubs podcast. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan. We are coming to you on Friday. It is March 14th. And Brendan, by the time you and I speak next to our wonderful listeners and each other, because we don't talk to each other in between episodes, obviously.
Oh, no. I haven't talked to you in 2 weeks. You left me by myself last week.
Yes.
Yeah.
By the time we do speak to each other again, the Chicago Cubs, I'm just assuming, will be 2-0 on the 2025 season. Kyle Tucker, 3 to 4 homers probably in 2 games, something along those lines.
That's it. That's it.
But yeah, it's interesting, Brennan. We talked, you and I have mentioned before that, comparing to like when we started talking about the team together and stuff like that we've covered different kinds of seasons. This is definitely a first for us. And I think everybody, with 2 games, then we take a break, and then we'll, really like get things going.
Weird how we're starting what seems like a fast off season and a fast spring. I feel as if I blinked and the off season just stormed on by, and we're making these crucial decisions about Matt Shaw on the 40-man and a 26-man roster. It snuck up on me, and I'm not sure I'm ready yet. I'm not sure I'm ready for the emotional roller coaster.
I have always, I know why they do it, but I hate the opening day off, finish the series thing that they started doing over the last like several years. I hate it. Like when baseball's back, I'm excited. I hate that, that you get that immediate come down. This is going to be interesting. And
you have a whole week off.
It does sort of just feel like there's a guarantee kind of situation here. Like if the Cubs win both of these games, we're all going to get a little crazy.
Okay. You're getting like, you're in a very good mood today. You're thinking about winning 2 games against the Dodgers.
Well, I was gonna offer the other outcome, but like if they win 2 games, they beat the Dodgers in 2 games, Matt Shaw hits a homer, Kyle Tucker, looks like himself, et cetera, we're all going to run away with what we think is going to be possible because we're going to have a week to sit on it. Yeah. At the same time, they lose both games. They look outclassed by the Dodgers. The pitcher's getting lit up. Everybody's struggling at the plate. That's going to be a rough week for all of us.
I don't want to think about that at all. I have not even gone down that rabbit hole. Yeah. I'm hoping for a split. That's all I'm really hoping for. Get a split, keep me at bay, keep me calm for a week, get everyone healthy and ready to go for the domestic opening day.
Yeah, as I said, I'm glad that they're doing this. It's
amazing.
Good,
this is like it's great for the sport. I don't know how it is for you, but I have a lot of friends who are casual baseball observers, and over the past 2 years, only because of Ohtani, they're tuned into what's going on.
Yeah,
and I feel as if baseball, since we started recording, may have been perceived as like declining, but over the last 2 years, I feel this like external casual momentum where folks are tuning in a series like this with Seiya, with Ohtani, with Roki, with Shota. It's the perfect time to have these 2 teams play right now to start the year.
Yeah, it does feel like a very healthy thing for the sport. It's cool. As we talked about, I think, a couple of weeks ago when you and I were last on together, like I have to be disciplined in not like overreacting to these 2 games and
Are you even gonna
understanding
watch the
that they are
games?
gonna come back for 160 more.
Yeah.
And like, that's what we have to
Will
be
you
focused.
wake up and watch these games? What is it, 5 a.m. your time?
I
There's
was gonna ask
no
you the same
there's
question.
no
Great.
way you're watching these games.
Yeah, I mean, a little inside baseball for the
There's
listeners.
no
I'm
way.
not a morning person.
That's putting it lightly, not a
Be
morning
to
person.
be honest with you, Brendan
You're barely an afternoon person, Corey.
to be honest with you, Brendan, I think the more likely outcome, and you asked the question wrong, do I stay up?
Yeah. Well, what do you think you're gonna do? Have you even
I
thought
have
about
to
it?
watch them. I
Oh
can't. I've
man.
never been a like record the game or watch it later, and even like with MLB TV and all this stuff, they make it easy to do, but I
Yeah.
can't do it. I got to know what's going on.
I can't do this, man. 3 a.m. for me on the West Coast. What are we doing here? Why are these games so early? I know, like I know
Not
the
for us,
Japanese.
Brendan. Yeah.
Well, I know the Japanese start times. There's prime time over there, but throw me a bone. 3 a.m. on the West Coast.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
Well,
Especially
I
for
mean, I
LA.
imagine that's how all of the, diehard fans of Seiya Suzuki and Shota Imanaga trying to watch
Yeah,
162 Cubs games.
that's fair.
So
Okay, I
turnabout is fair
understand that.
play.
Touche.
Either way, I'm very excited. The content has been cool. We saw, Seiya in the batting cage the other day with a sword. We're getting content from, it looked like on Thursday night, Shota and Seiya hosted like a welcome dinner for everybody, getting them acclimated, some of the customs. And it's cool. It looks like a really cool experience. It's, obviously not similar at all, but I, remember like the trips we would do. I mentioned it before, like when I was working for the team at Michigan, and it was awesome. Like going to different places, experiencing different cities and stuff like that, like with the team and stuff. I'm sure this is a massively cool experience for these guys. And I'm glad the Cubs get to be a part of it, whether I have to wake up at, 5 a.m. or not. As you said, it's good. I'm glad they're going to be on the stage. And that's part of the thing that we always talk about, Brendan. Like when prior to them getting Kyle Tucker, when we hammered so much, like they need a star player. It's the Cubs, it's Wrigley Field, it's this franchise. Like this is the type of stuff that they should be doing. They should be a team that Major League Baseball, because of their players, because of the franchise that they are, they want to show off the Chicago Cubs. And, right now, of course, they are not organizationally in the same place as the team they're going to be playing next week, the Dodgers. But they should be in that top tier of like, hey, we got a big event we're putting on and we're going to invest a lot of money in. The Cubs should be one of the teams that gets thought of. And that needs to be because of their roster and also their overall standing. So this is cool. It's going to be fun. And I'm just going to have to adjust, to not overreacting to 2 games before we even.
Oh, you'll be fine. You've rationalized yourself over the years since I've known you. You were much worse 10 years ago.
Yeah.
In your spunky mid-20s.
Sure. So I do want to get into the roster that they're taking to Japan, kind of what it means. I know, Cody and Luke have touched on this a bit, but do want to talk about some of that stuff, some of the decisions they made, some of the decisions they still have to make in terms of 40-man decisions and ultimately chopping down to that 26-man roster, how they're using their taxi squad, these insurance spots, etc. A lot to talk about. And I do also want to talk just about some of the developments, since you and I last talked. Obviously, Gage Workman, a really nice story and a cool opportunity there that's, kind of unfolded over the spring. On Thursday, we were getting a Lance Lynn rumor connected to the Cubs. So want to talk about that and what that means.
Yeah.
Your face is exactly mine, but if it's something,
well, a flood of memories came back. That's why.
Thinking of, we got to talk about it. Maybe not even so much focusing on him particularly, but where does this report come from and why would there be interest there? So a lot to talk about on this episode. But yeah, I think that wraps. I'm looking forward to those 2 games. I'm not looking forward to either staying up or being up at 5 a.m. But it'll be fun. And I think that's one of those times where, as we've had the opportunity to get a little more connected with like Cubs Twitter folks over the years and all the people that we've connected with from CHGO and stuff, like I think it'll be fun to text friends of ours and, colleagues that are also up at 5 a.m.
Don't text me. I'll be snoozing away. I'm not up at 3 a.m.
Okay.
I'm not letting this team do this to me. I say that now, I might be.
You're going to be awake, but
Probably.
if you weren't, what would be the threshold for like, I need to call you 5 times in a row to make sure you pick? Like if Shota's throwing a no-hitter, can I wake you up?
Yeah.
If Kyle Tucker hits a grand slam, can I wake you up?
Yeah, I mean, you can wake me up after the first base hit. Brendan, did you see? Leadoff base hit.
Yeah. Carson Kelly.
Oh my God. Carson Kelly.
Yeah.
Sure, you can do Carson Kelly.
All right. Well, so let's go into the roster. Let's just stay on the Japan series. Obviously, that is what's coming up.
Confusing roster rules, by the way.
Yeah, it is.
If you're confused about the roster rules, you're not alone. Okay?
You're not alone.
You do a lot of homework to figure this one out.
They get a 31-man roster, which includes a 5-man taxi squad. So really just guys that logistically they're bringing over to Japan, because obviously if enough guys got sick or hurt or anything, would be kind of difficult to get there for the game, flying, across the world. So they do get that. I believe they get a couple of insurance spots as well. So my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is Nico does not have to go on the injured list when they play these games.
Correct.
If he's not able to be ready by the time they get back for, the openers in Arizona, then they have to make a different decision. They don't have to make that decision right now. So it is a little confusing. But obviously some things of note, the last guys kind of off the roster, Kevin Alcantara, Keegan Thompson, Javier Assad, Nico Horner. We know about some of the injuries there. And when we talk about decisions they still have to make, Keegan is going to be one of those. If he is not going to make the 26-man roster, he is out of options. So they don't need to make that decision just this second. Again, guys can get hurt, guys can get sick over there, et cetera, any number of things. Maybe they try to work a trade, or by the time they do need to settle on a 26-man roster, they would have to try to DFA him, work him through waivers, or see if they find a trade partner. So that was a pretty particular decision. One that I remember when we were looking at the chart of guys and we talked about it with Jared as well. Do they opt for the guys that are out of options and kind of give them that chance first? Do they say, you know what, some of these guys have looked better, we're going to have to sacrifice some of these guys that are without options? And, this is sort of one of our first clues into that.
We still have to make a change on the 40-man to get Matt Shaw, on that roster. So will it be a DFA of someone like Gavin Hollowell, for instance? There's decisions to be made even before we make that decision of Keegan Thompson. Maybe it is Keegan Thompson. Who knows, right? I'm surprised generally if we take a step back, and surprise might be too strong of a word, but pleasantly surprised that Matt Shaw did make the Japanese series. First and foremost, simply due to the oblique injury. I imagined him ramping up this fast was really difficult. And to his credit, he did it. And he's been performing very well in game action. That's the main reason. Second, I thought after they made so many depth-driven moves, both in the positional and pitching side, that they would try to preserve that. So as a result of Shaw making the team, Travis Jankowski now signed with the White Sox, a center fielder backup option. That is not me saying, oh, I want Travis Jankowski on this roster, but I'm just a little surprised that they were willing to have Shaw on the opening day Japanese roster and sacrifice just a sliver of depth. And who knows if you even want to call that depth, but it is a pleasant surprise that they're putting their best team forward and acknowledging that Shaw's health is good enough to play next week in Tokyo.
Yeah, I think once Shaw proved he was healthy, I think when he was first coming back from the oblique, there was a question in the air because it was like, do you need to rush this? Like, take your time.
And with obliques, you never know.
Yeah, get him ready for the 160 schedule. It's okay if he misses these two. Maybe that extra week is going to be valuable as he's been playing, and that doesn't seem to be the case. Like, yeah, I'm with it. Like, let's roll. you guys know, if you were listening to us, like both of us were into the Alex Bregman thing and, figuring out a super utility role for Shaw or whatever it was so he could get, 400 plus plate appearances.
And so was Jed. Jed was into it too.
So was Jed, yeah. Once you don't do that though, like Shaw's your guy. Like, let's ride.
Yeah,
and that goes with it too. Like, this is a cool experience. Like, especially for a guy like Shaw, like he hasn't been around the big leagues. He's not traveled to all these big cities, played at all these stadiums yet. He hasn't played in like the playoffs or the World Series, any of those significant things. Like, this is a cool opportunity to travel across the world, one of the most sought after countries to travel to in the world, and play in a spectacle of the sport. And if he's healthy and he's going to be your guy at third base, let's go. He should be in the lineup then. Like, as you said, Brendan, I think put perfectly, like, put your best team forward. Like, if guys are healthy, if they're ready to go, like, the Dodgers are really good. These games count. You don't want to rush anything. You don't want to prioritize these 2 games in a vacuum, but hey, like, hit the ground running, man. And like, it's a cool opportunity for Shaw. And I think a good show of confidence from the team. Like, you're our guy. Like, you're going to be on this big stage. Like, let's ride, man. Let's start your career with a bang.
Hopefully it's multiple bangs, maybe a few home runs there. That would be nice. But let's go ahead and take our first ad break, come back around, continue this discussion, talk about some of the decisions looming as well. First ad break here is from Toyota. The Chicago winter, even the spring, can be brutal, but Toyota helps make it easier. Toyota's got 25 vehicles with available all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive. They have more than any other auto brand, from the sleek Camry all-wheel drive to the Corolla hybrid all-wheel drive. The Toyota Tundra is also a truck known for its power, durability, and off-road capabilities that's perfect for the winter. They have more than any other auto brand, so you bring the action and Toyota will bring the traction. Toyota, let's go places. Waymo is an autonomous ride-hailing service that operates in Phoenix, Arizona, the Phoenix metro area. These cars entirely drive themselves. They use cameras, LiDAR, and radar. Over the past few years, their service has grown to serve a majority of the Phoenix Valley and provide a safer, more eco-friendly ride-hailing service for everyday consumers. They've had over 150,000 trips per week, also across San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Phoenix. Waymo was also the first company to fully serve an autonomous ride with no human being behind the wheel back in 2015. They have over 40 million miles since then of real-world driving experience, and that's enough to drive to the moon and back 80 times. If you are heading out to Arizona for spring training, download the Waymo app and get ready to experience the future.
All right, Brendan, we're back. I also, if you're not watching on YouTube, you're missing out on my Pearl Jam collection behind us. I updated
were you
my
waiting
wall.
For me to bring that up?
I thought you might. Yeah.
Okay.
It's really just an excuse over my right shoulder. Because I'm looking at myself in a mirrored image, I actually had to double check which shoulder this was. Similar to when I had to count on my fingers. So
I counted on my fingers last week. It's actually pretty difficult to count to 10.
Over my right shoulder here, let me figure out how to get out of the way, is a needlepoint that my grandma made.
What does that say in the bottom of the needlepoint?
It does say that the Chicago Cubs won the 2016 World Series.
Which year was that?
2016.
That they won the World Series?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Believe it or not.
That's right. That's correct. Yeah.
I've said this before, but like we get further away, it's like it does start to feel like
I don't care. I'll be 85 years old.
I know that, but it does sort of heighten my like. You guys got to win. You guys got to win another one.
Does it feel as if it's been almost 10 years? Honestly,
no, I don't think so.
No. It's weird. No. It's bizarre.
So let's keep looking at this roster and see anything that jumps out. Now, I suppose we can tie a couple of these conversations together. Javier Assad not on the roster, dealing with some stuff, working through some injury stuff. And
that's actually more disappointing. I feel as if we've discussed, and I've seen even in like the online community, because we'll get into it, but Assad is maybe prompting other moves in negotiations, including the Lance Lynn. So just to bring this up front, the Assad injury is maybe more impactful than we're lending on. It kind of sucks.
Yeah, I mean, look, that was one of the things when we talked about how the Cubs addressed their pitching depth. We went through a lot and felt like they had a lot of good names for not just the rotation, but through the bullpen, the entire pitching staff. But it was one of those areas I think a lot of us really wanted them to address in a more impactful way than they ended up doing. And this is sort of one of those, risks that comes along with that. I think there's a lot of potential and a lot of interesting things about someone like Matthew Boyd, but the injury history is something to consider. Your own staff had injuries last year, and then you're getting into, how many starts are you comfortable or interested in Colin Ray making, things like that. Jordan Wicks pitched the other day. He's looking healthy, he's looking good, but he was, also working back from an injury. So how soon is it that Jordan Wicks is ready to, be going 7 innings every 5 days or anything like that? Like the jury is still out on that. And you're going to want to be at least somewhat mindful of how you're utilizing him. So I think I did want to bring that up in comparison with the Lance Lynn rumor. I mean, Bob Nightingale tweeted that they were in negotiations with him, but it never really went anywhere on Thursday. If, as you're listening to this on Friday, double check, that may have changed, but would at least suggest that there is some legit interest there. And I think it's all related. You look at this and you try to decipher, like, how are you going to get through this season? We've seen any number of times that even teams that feel like they have so much starting pitching, like by the end of the year, here's a guy making a spot start that wasn't on the roster, that they pulled out of AAA, or that they pulled out of, somebody else's DFAs or anything like that. Just the nature of the game. It's a lot of games. It's a lot of starts. It's a lot of innings that you need to cover. Blanket statement, I am not interested in Lance Lynn. Everything about his career is going the wrong direction. And I, in general, I would rather give whatever potential innings you'd even be thinking about giving to him to somebody from the minors, like anyone else. See if you can unlock some value there.
What, you want Caleb Killian throwing innings?
Okay, so not anyone. No, but like, honestly, like, maybe like give it like, here's the thing. Like, you just have a guy, ERA, FIP, left on base rates, like all these things just trending in the wrong direction. An older guy, I get the depth. And that's why we're talking about it. When you have Assad dealing with injuries, you have Wicks looking like he's going to be healthy, but still probably on some sort of plan to make sure that he's, taking care of that injury and not overworking himself, etc. You have a guy in Boyd who you're going to have to manicure and be careful with, and like at least monitor his innings and his workload as far as his body's responding. Steele was hurt last year. Shota dealt with some things. It's his second year in the majors. I get why they're interested in depth. You can never have too much pitching depth. We said that every time they signed one of these guys. But I find somebody that isn't Lance Lynn. I'm not interested in that. If Zombro, these guys were like, listen, I know what to do here. Like, I mean, like, okay, like I trust you guys. But when I saw that report, you and I, we texted each other and we're just like, why? Like, what?
Well, let's play devil's advocate here. Okay. So
sure,
last
you
season,
go on record and talk about how much you want Lance Lynn, and I'll let you be the one playing that side.
You're the big Justin Turner fan over there. Always have been since 2017. He's your guy.
I don't know if that's comparable, is it?
No, it's not comparable. I don't want to put the two in the same tier. That being said, though, Lance Lynn did have some success last year. We talked about FIP and ERA, and you talked about the FIP concerns. That is fair, but the ERA last season was 3.8. Yeah. The expected ERA was almost 5, and the FIP was almost 4.4. So there's a discrepancy there. But what do the Cubs do well? They field the baseball well. So if there's a perception that he can induce weak contact that otherwise teams, not the Cubs, would not be able to field, then I think it does make some sense. He also, again, durability, the lack of velocity happened about 3 seasons ago. So he's been throwing 92, 93 for 3 straight seasons. For him and the Cubs, it's a matter of, can he pitch league average innings? Can he pitch to a league average rate for maybe in the first 2 months, 1 start every 14 days, every 2 weeks? And if they come to the conclusion that, yeah, it makes some sense because he had a recent 3.8 ERA, because even in some of the maybe off-season throwing programs, he's not throwing slower, I'm going to default to the Cubs pitching infrastructure. And I will trust that that potential signing is better than what they have in-house, or that they want to preserve that depth, including Caleb Killian later on during the season. I don't think it's a bad thing to have this much depth. It depends, though, for you as a fan, how comfortable you are giving another 40-man spot to Lance Lynn, as well as maybe having to wait a little bit longer to give Jordan Wicks or Ben Brown starting pitching innings.
Yeah. I mean, I think that sums it up really nicely. Obviously, you are the pitch doctor for a reason. Again, though, it does indicate, you never know with these reports, like what's actually happening, but I think it's been thrown out there, a few times, and it does make sense if you put yourself in the position of the front office thinking like, do we have enough pitching depth? Like, if Assad is dealing with this injury, like we're dealing with some of this stuff already, like, we're going to need to be prepared for this. There, obviously you can question whether Lance Lynn is the person you want to answer that situation, but it does make sense that this is, I feel like this is going to be something they're looking at the entire season. It's nice to think that guys are going to be healthy or that they'll step up if the opportunity arises and things like that. But I think, even when we were going back to our offseason discussions, we talked about how maybe they would save some of the money that they otherwise could have spent in free agency and make a big splash if they're in it at the deadline and go get someone like Sandy Alcantara. Who,
well, it's still a possibility.
Yeah, but so I'm saying, like, part of the reason you can, obviously if you can get a frontline starter, that's always a good thing to do. But part of the reason we were talking about that is because they didn't really address that in the offseason. So this has always felt like they felt their starting pitching was incomplete. We saw them pursue some of these other guys, Luzardo being an example. Clearly they were interested in potentially upgrading their rotation to a more significant degree than they did. Now, obviously, of course, Lance Lynn is not in that conversation, but it just reflects that you always need starting pitching depth. And the reason that we were honing in on some of that is the concern about instability as it relates to this rotation and just being certain. Like, it's always easy to compare it, Brendan, to, we joke about talking about the 2016 team, but it's always easy to compare it to that team because you had several guys on that team. At the beginning of the year, obviously you can never control injuries, but the beginning of the year, you could have been like, all right, these guys are all going to make 30 something starts. They're going to throw 170 to 200 something innings, book it, write it in pen because you're not going to need an eraser. Like, there you go. And this team just isn't like that. So I think it's going to be a constant thing from the front office, like trying to make sure they have the depth and that they're ready if stuff goes south for any of these guys.
If you look at what the starting pitching staff needs to accomplish, it's 5.5 innings per game. If you go to just Fangraphs and look at the projected innings, it's essentially 162 games times 5.5. That's what they need. Javier Assad's projected at 113 innings. So if his oblique injury is more severe or there's an unpredictable timeline, Jed is weighing, can he anticipate him even getting 113 innings? And if he can't, then you have to boost up the innings from everyone underneath him. That means Colin Ray, who's currently at 110, you may need to bump him up to 130. Jordan Wicks is at 31 innings. You may need to bump him up 20 innings as well. Ben Brown as well. Caleb Killian as well. So I imagine Jets looking at Javier Assad's lack of timeline. He's not even throwing yet from what we know, and trying to make sure that the depth is still intact, because there aren't many other options, Corey. We talked about even Jordan Wicks' injury, as you alluded to. Ben Brown, although he looks healthy, still coming back from a bone tumor, a literal benign bone tumor. And Caleb Killian's been all over the place, and this is trying to hope that Jamison Tyone's age doesn't have some effect, and Justin Steele can last some nagging injuries he's shown, and Shota Imanaga can repeat. So I think it does make a lot of sense. And Lance Lynn, if he does not succeed, if they do sign him in the first few weeks, then you cut bait, and then you try to, you dial up someone else on top of that depth chart.
Yeah. And let me ask you this before we hit our second break. I don't want that to... We're responding to a rumor that the Cubs may be doing something. I don't feel... I wish that they had added another top line starter, but I feel like every fan in baseball could say that. I mean, the Dodgers
wish we had
12
Max Fried on this team. That was like the guy we both wanted.
I was going to say, even the Dodgers have 12 frontline starters at this point. I bet their fan base would take another one. Like, nobody's complaining when you get.
And they'll probably get another one too, but not by the time the trade deadline passes.
But nobody's ever going to complain like, we have too many really good starting pitchers that go deep into games and might win the Cy Young. Like, what a terrible problem to have. So I wish that they had done that, but I feel solid enough about this group even without that, with the caveat, as we've discussed, they're going to have to keep a very watchful eye on this. And if they are in the mix for the division or for a playoff spot and have that flexibility at the deadline, there's no question in my mind that to get to the end of this season and succeed at all, if they make the playoffs, whether that's, winning one round, winning the pennant, whatever your individual goals are, I'm almost positive they're going to need another top level starting pitcher. Even the belief I have in this group, to get all the way there, there's going to have to be somebody else in that mix that is not part of it right now.
No doubt. Let's do the second ad break here. We can talk about maybe some other pitching options. Brad Keller has had some news this week, and it also informs maybe what the front office is thinking for the starting pitching staff. So we'll get back into it. So let's take our ad break here. Timeline. Timeline sells health longevity supplements featuring their proprietary MitoPure ingredient. MitoPure works with the cells in your body to help reverse age-related decline. They have done over 15 years of research and secured over 30 U.S. patents for their products. Again, their patented ingredient is MitoPure, is a postbiotic nutrient that clears out dysfunctional mitochondria, aka your cell's battery packs. Oh, those mitochondria. Right now, Timeline is giving you 10% off your order of MitoPure. Go to timeline.com/CHGO today to get started. That's timeline.com/CHGO. All right, Mando. Mando is a men's deodorant brand that's focused on keeping every aspect of a man's body smelling fresh and clean. Yes, every single aspect. It's safe to use anywhere on your body: pits, privates, thighs, folds, belly buttons, butt cracks, and feet. It's created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. You can choose from a variety of fresh scents, including bourbon leather, cloverwoods, Mount Fuji, or Pro Sport. It is clinically proven to control odor better than a shower with soap alone. 12 hours after a shower, the average men's Grundle odor level was a 5 out of 10. But with Mando, the average Grundle odor level is a 0 out of 10. Mando Starter Pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, and 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes. Best part of all, free shipping. And as a special offer for listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code that equates to over 40% off your starter pack. Use that code CHGO at shopmando.com. SHOPMANDO.com.
All right, Brendan.
There's John Lester looking
is.
right at us. World Series champion John Lester.
Did you watch the Cubs Productions thing about the walk-off bunt?
I did.
Very good.
Very good. Well, Cubs Productions just does A+ content when it comes to that.
They are Emmy winners for a reason. I do appreciate that even in a like discussion like that, you can feel like John's competitiveness. Like he's very serious in the whole video. Like, and it happened 9 years ago and he succeeds. But even then you can like, he has his like game face on for that whole interview. It's funny.
When will we get John Lester back in the dugout? Just for spring training instructs.
I don't know.
That's all I'm asking for.
He's ever expressed any interest in doing anything like that.
I saw him with the Red Sox uniform last spring. Not this one, but the previous one.
He's got kids and stuff. He's in a deer stand. I always wondered if he would be interested in doing any of that.
Well, we can draft his children, bring him back into the Cubs. I'm about that.
I like that. Yeah.
Well, we're going to run the team, right?
So, but going back to what we were talking about before the second ad break, do you have any concerns about this rotation? I feel like when we talk about this team, it's okay.
I mean, you have to have the worst case scenario etched out. Before spring started, we were not anticipating Javier Assad being injured. We were not anticipating, I personally was not anticipating Jordan Wicks may have a slower ramp up than I anticipated. I don't know if this is actually true or not because we don't have the publicly accessible data. There are some reports. Again, I'm not putting much stock into it, but his fastball shape is apparently not where they want it to be. That being said, the fastball velocity, 93, 94, is where I want it to be. So I'm not concerned about maybe the fastball shape not being where it was, but I don't even know if that's true or not because I have no data to even support that. But I have read that might be a thing.
So I do this occasionally for the listeners who maybe immediately do not recognize what you mean when you say that. What would the issue be when you say his fastball shape isn't where they want it to be?
I'll speculate because I don't want to say this is what's going on because we don't know. So this
is just vaguely with that term.
Vaguely, if we draw a parallel over the years to Jameson Taillon's fastball, listen to how he talks about shape and how Tommy Hotovy talks about shape. They talked about shape of Taillon as his fastball tailing and running a little bit too much. Leakiness, more horizontal break and less carry. If I were to speculate, maybe Wicks is doing that more, but I don't even know. So please don't take that as gospel. But when we talk about shape in the past for Taillon, that's been one representation of what they mean by shape.
Sure. And I mean, again, that's the type of thing when we talk about spring training, and that's what they're there to do. These guys have been ramping up all offseason. They're getting into game action. They're facing hitters. They're going through the routine of getting up, getting 3 outs, sitting down, getting up, back, doing again. So this is all the stuff that you have to iron out when a guy's working back from an injury and, still young in his career. Like these are the things you're going to be looking at and typically working on in spring training.
But I thought he looked good in his last outing. I think he threw 4 or 5 innings. He piggybacked off Shota in Goodyear against the Guardians, and he was throwing 93, 94, showed some good breaking pitches, some good curveballs even. The changeup was there. That's why when I read reports like that, I'm like, should I really should I interpret this as significant? I really don't know.
Who knows? I'll never forget the summer that I never thought I'd get to a point in my life where I spent so much time thinking and reading and hearing about the horizontal movement on Jameson Taillon's fastball. That was a fun summer.
Oh, listen,
when we were trying to figure out what was wrong with him. I remember watching that every night and being like, "Oh, Brendan's not going to like that."
Oh my God, 10 inches of horizontal break. Yeah. What are we doing? Needs to be 5.
Yeah, in the first inning, it's like, it's going to be one of those. Brendan told me that number's bad. I don't know what it means, but it's bad.
I know. Sometimes I hate watching games because I dial in on that. It's not fun. I got to stop doing that. It's a bad habit. You can draw too many conclusions that way.
You got to sit with Cody in the bleachers, man. I don't think you're legally allowed to think about horizontal break when you're with him in the bleachers.
Well, I'm not. First off, I'm not a bleacher guy. No offense to your bleacher bumps out there, but first off, I don't want the sun in my face. Okay, I want shade. Number 1. Number 2, I can't see the game from the bleachers. Okay. Number 3, they're too loud out there. I don't want the loudness. You know what? You know what I like the most? I like Shea behind home plate and Corey Friedman's season tickets. Those are my favorite tickets.
This has got to be the least surprising thing to anyone that's listened to us probably for more than 5 minutes. If I told you we're both diehard Cubs fans, we live and breathe, our lives are affected by the outcomes of these games
in a sad way,
and that both of us are not Bleacher guys. There's no way anyone could be surprised by that.
I'm comfortable in my skin expressing that. That's who I am.
We know what we like. We know what we want. And as Luke Stuckmeyer always says, fan however you want, sit wherever you want, do whatever you want. No judgment. It's not for me. So
no. If someone puts a beer, nothing against the beer snake. That beer snake touches me in the 4th inning, I'm a little aggravated, little perturbed over there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's on the rules. I know our friend Joe at Obvious Shirts put out the Bleacher rules thing, and I'm pretty sure there's a rule on there that the cup snakes are only for blowouts.
Okay. Well, that's a great rule.
I'll leave that to y'all in the bleachers, but I do believe that that's one of the rules on the official Bleacher Bum shirt. So,
okay.
Anyway, we're in the weeds now. I do feel like in these last 20 minutes of this episode, Brendan, like I do want to get your thoughts on, like, you mentioned a guy like Brad Keller. I kind of want to check in there. I feel like he's been one of those guys that everybody's been very interested in, kind of like changing his career path a little bit and like trying to get the most out of him as a bullpen guy potentially. Also, Gage Workman, I know, a guy that we've all kind of been following along. Interesting, really nice story, opportunity that he'll have. And then I think, like, by the end, like, we're going to have time when you and I talk next week. The Cubs will have an official record on the 2025 season. Stats will be real. Stuff will have happened. But we're going to have a week until, they play the rest of the season. That being said, though, I kind of feel like we have to get on record today with what we kind of think is about to go down here in 2025. I don't know if we can do that next Friday after there's 2 games already in the bank.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at the remaining pitching decisions, we're seeing hints of what's to come, and pay attention to what Craig Counsell's saying. So Craig Counsell put out a recent quote with the media. Let me read this. He said, quote, "We think this is an improving player. Despite the experience and the age, between the velocity and the slider, we still think there's room to go. We've got our eyes open to possibly a different role than he's ever done. That means maybe we get a different pitcher than we've seen. All those things have made him really interesting." This comes after he was not used in a starting pitching role in spring. He threw, I think, 13 pitches in his previous outing. That is a high leverage, pump it out type role. And then we look at some of the pitch shapes that we just talked about. The fastball looks a little different, a little bit less cut, a little bit more ride, actually. So he was more of a cut ride guy. And he's not, from what we've seen, worked on that north to south third pitch that I think we would need to see for him to be a starting pitcher. It's trending towards him being a 2-pitch guy with increased velocity, with a unique release point, and being used in a relief role. Is that going to happen? I'm not sure, but just the recent trends point to that being more of a possibility than I thought was his intention of signing with the Cubs. And then you start thinking about the Lance Lynn negotiations and the starting pitching depth. And because he's not being talked about in that depth, makes me think the bullpen is becoming more likely than I would have thought.
I'm rather intrigued. I like the quote from Counsell that this is an improving player, like, despite the age and like past experience. It makes me feel it's one of those things where and I mean, they've sort of said as much, but just from an outside perspective, it feels like one of those things where, like, they have all these pitching infrastructure guys, all this technology and, new paradigms, and they feel like they have something in Brad Keller. Like, they feel like there is something that they are really pleased with, like what they're seeing and like the data and like the potential of what could happen. And it's just kind of a work in progress to get it there. Because obviously you're changing, a lot about a guy who's been around for a good while and had a routine and a way he was going about things. And it sound, clearly they're tweaking some of that. And, even with what he's doing on the mound, but it also his potential role. But I like that quote because it feels to me like it's kind of like we have something here. We're just trying to like iron it out and like get it together and figure out how to use it. But I'm intrigued by stuff like that because as we talked about, Brendan, like if you're not going to make those high-end free agent additions or, you don't have, obviously Porter Hodge has been a really nice development, some other nice developments, but, you don't have that immediate guy that's like, oh yeah, we have this guy coming up from AAA. He's throwing 103. He's our closer of the future. Like that's locked and loaded. This is how they have to succeed. You have to be better.
And it's how Craig succeeded in Milwaukee by taking similar guys.
Yeah. And we talk about this a lot. Like the baseball is a game that changes constantly. And in our lifetimes, it's a game that has changed by miles. The way that we evaluate players, the way we evaluate performance, the way they train, the way they're taught, it's all completely different than when we were growing up. Even the stats that we look at now, didn't even exist, or they existed in extremely rudimentary forms when we were growing up. And the Cubs as a franchise, whatever those paradigms are, the goal is always to be one of the best. We talked about, kind of the way that they built the core in 2015, 2016. And that felt like when they won the World Series. I could tell you were disappointed I didn't do it.
There it is.
Like they felt like they were one of the teams that was at the forefront of thinking about how to manage these prospects, when to bring them up, how to navigate building your roster.
Drafting exclusively college pitchers and hitters, top rounds.
And it felt like they were at the top of that particular line of thinking. Yeah. Then as years went on, you and I talked a bunch about how it felt like they were behind. Other teams were jumping them in terms of like some of that launch angle stuff. They were not seeing the same level of success that a team like the Dodgers was with someone like Justin Turner, for example. They were routinely angling for like slower throwing pitchers when the rest of the league was like seemingly moving towards like as much velocity as humanly possible.
Aren't we still are?
Yeah. You bring up that stuff all the time that like, sometimes they're throwing sinkers at the top of the zone and other teams aren't doing it. And different things. The point I'm making and how it relates to Brad Keller is like, one of the areas that the game is going is this extreme, like advanced technology in evaluating these pitchers and hitters and the data that allows you to fine tune how the ball is spinning out of a guy's hand, the release point, the movement, and really change that stuff because you are able to look at it as data instead of this kind of like abstract physical thing that you have to figure out. The Cubs need to be one of the best at this stuff. And if they're not just going to go out and sign Corbin Burns and Max Fried, those are examples in the rotation, obviously, but same goes for the bullpen and the entire pitching staff. They have to be really good at developing their own, making trades, and bringing in guys that maybe other teams don't know how to utilize properly and saying, we are going to figure this out and we're going to get something valuable out of this guy that maybe other teams can't figure out.
And it's going to start balancing across the league. If you look at Stern, who's now with the Mets, I was watching a Mets spring training game and they're talking the same language about pitch shapes and new technology. And of course, Stern brought that over from Milwaukee. You look at Craig Breslow, who came from the Cubs, went to Boston, you're seeing similar discussions. Now, of course, Carter goes from Cleveland to Chicago and brings over some of this other new pitching lingo as well. It's going to balance. And what's most important is how the coaches use that information and best communicate with players. And the harmony amongst scouts, coaches, and the front office is going to determine who gets the most value out of those projects. So when we talk about Tyler Zombrell, who's younger than us, former George Mason pitcher, Tampa Bay Rays organizational pitcher as well, short athletics guy, he's in a role of special assistant. So he's in parts trying to find guys who fit certain traits so that coaches can mold them into what you're talking about exactly. So it's going to continuously evolve. And the Cubs' current front office, while lots going right, we talked about this a lot, but it's examples and projects like Keller that if most of those projects don't succeed, then it's likely those front offices get turned over. So in one sense, it's kind of exhausting talking about these lower tier quote unquote projects and Keller and among the myriad of the different guys in past years, but it's those projects that determine those extensions for the front offices and those free agents and the minor league signings who want to go through that process with the Cubs. So it is important for the value that the player brings, but it also represents a point where other players who may be unique and have different options from different teams, they choose the Cubs because their friends and the past experiences tell them that's the best chance to get better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Brad Keller had other options, by the way, too. And he's if he doesn't make the Cubs team, apparently he has scouts. Jared Willis told us this. Other teams wanting to sign him, so he is in demand, believe it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, and you want them feeling confident in the Cubs' ability to do exactly what we were just talking about. So
it's a necessity.
We'll see how that all plays out. I do want to ask you about Gage Workman making the team. Obviously it's just spring training here, 33 at bats, but a 1200 OPS. We've seen what he can do with the glove. Has a very good reputation with the glove. Of course, it's Matt Shaw's job. And, when Nico's back, we'll see if John Birdie's taking the lion's share at second base until he's, ready to start every day, et cetera, et cetera. You feel like Cubs found themselves a gem in Gage Workman? Is this another spring training mirage? How do you feel about that?
I love defense, right? So he's showing good defense at third base and shortstop. If I had to guess what trait is most comfortable for the front office, I would say is Gage Workman's defense versus Vidal Brujan's speed. I like what I'm seeing. I'm not going to draw too many conclusions from 35 plate appearances in spring training. Yeah. That being said, he is facing some quality pitchers. What I look for in Gage Workman is how he looks this spring versus the past season. So his difference this spring is similar to what Miguel Amaya was doing last second half. No leg stride. Toe comes up, toe goes down. Everything's more balanced. And for Gage Workman to have any semblance of success at the big league level, he needs to not be an utter mess offensively because the bat, or rather the defense, should carry value. So if he can just make more contact, it becomes a numbers game. More contact, more potential base hits. And if he specifically meets a threshold, let's say a 90 WRC plus, which is asking a lot for Gage Workman, a 90 WRC plus with top tier defense at third base that can spell Dansby if he needs to, and Nico needs to, get spelled as well. I'm about it. Am I confident that's going to happen? No, but at least I'm interested in the possibility, especially given what we've seen over the last few years being absolute dumpster fire. I'm so thrilled. I'm not going to get into a tangent, but I'm so thrilled that the days of the small, powerless, defensive, incompetent infielders are gone. Eric Sogard, gone. What happened after Eric Sogard? Nick Madrigal, gone. I was almost worried about Nicky Lopez. No offense to Nicky Lopez. Nicky Lopez, gone. No more smaller. And I can say this as a smaller guy myself. I'm not that small. I'm still like 5'10", 5'11", but I can say that. Gage Workman, 6'5", with defensive competency in multiple positions that grades as a 70 out of 80 with power potential. Sign me up for that. If it fails, it fails, but at least it's something different.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and if you're going to fall back on anything, like just be able to help your pitching staff out, turn ground balls into outs.
And not have to crow hop from third base as if you're throwing home from the warning track.
We don't have to talk about that anymore.
I know.
You're doing it to yourself.
I'm doing it to myself. What am I doing?
I know. So in these last few minutes here, first thing I'm going to tell you is on Monday, 17th, you should, as a listener, you, Brendan, too, tune in to the CHGO Cubs podcast and YouTube show with Cody and Luke. They have a very special guest, and I would encourage you to tune in.
Did they announce it yet, the guest, or no?
No, that is going to be my tease. You should tune in. That's my advice. So beyond,
it's not going to be us. We're not the special guest.
It is not me. No.
Oh, okay. It's not me either, in case you're wondering.
God, how much of a letdown would that be?
Yeah.
Tell people to listen. It's us.
Hey guys, what's going on?
What do you think happens? What do you think? Do they win the division? Are they back in the playoffs? Are we breaking the streak of not making the playoffs in a full season since 2018? What do you think?
I'm an idiot. Of course I think that. What the hell's wrong with you? You know?
Okay.
I look at every one of these pictures, I think, oh yeah, they're going to work.
Are we 83, obviously the magic number. We're getting over that. We're getting over the hump, or no?
Oh yeah, I think so. Like, for real. I think if you want to be like objective about it, they're probably an 88 win team as like your 50th percentile outcome. Okay.
Worked for the 2003 Cubs.
Right. So add 7, subtract 7 from 80, 88. So they're 81 to 95. I'll take the over on 88. I really will. I know, hot take over here. Look out. But you look at Kyle Tucker's offense, and it should be sustainable. I think Sam makes a stride this year. I really do, even though he's made strides last year. And I think we're going to get some really encouraging performances from PCA. PCA just continues to impress. I mean, he's making more changes in spring than I thought he would. So, of course, optimism is our disease, but I think there's a lot of bets, and because there's a lot of bets, I think just a few of them working puts them over the edge.
I tend to think so too. I mean, listening back, you guys, if you've listened to us throughout the offseason, like we wanted more. We hold the team accountable, I think, when they fall short of a pretty high standard that we all have for them. At the same time, like this team is better to me than last year. I really don't have any second guessing of that this team is better. There's still some uncertainties. We've gone through those things, how does Michael Busch perform in his second,
what's your biggest cause for angst?
We already talked about it. It's the rotation.
So for you, it is a rotation.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm very confident in Steele and Shota to be a competitive 1-2 in this league. I would feel good about them if we were, starting a playoff series and those were the first two guys getting the ball. Feel good about it. But when you look at the 1 through 5 and just the questions about health and again, like I said, like if they're going to get to where we want this team to be, they're going to need more than what they currently have, whether that's just to put them over the top, getting through October and some really good offenses and things like that, or to survive injuries, regression, poor performance, whatever it might be. I think that's always going to be one of the areas that, we look at for these types of things. So I'm in an okay spot as they start the season, but 162 is a grind, as we all know. And I don't, if I had to gamble on the area that we would look at and go, yeah, man, that's going to be the thing they have to address, or that's going to be the thing that is kind of, revolving door type thing of them trying to, stabilize things like that. But I think this offense is in a better spot. You do have these guys coming into second years, and I'm excited for Matt Shaw. I'm excited for him to get this opportunity. I think he's going to prove the believers right in his
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
We're gonna at the end of the episode, so I get it here. But just, it's fun. Throw them out. Name your top 3 WAR positional Cubs.
Okay. I feel like the answer is Kyle Tucker, PCA, Dansby.
Okay. That's what I was hoping you would say.
He always ends up there. Like, that's the thing. Like, his defense puts him up there.
What's Dansby's WAR? Just 4? Just to be safe?
Yeah, probably.
So you think PCA is a +4 win player this year?
I'm a believer in my guy PTA.
You're all about PTA.
That's not like a hot take, but his floor
not.
is so high, and just watching him, I'm telling you, man. Like I tweeted this. I watched him take that fastball on the outer edge to the left center gap.
That's all you needed.
And
to
I
see.
was like, that's all I needed to see. If he keeps doing that, he's going to be a billionaire. Like the home runs are cool. You know, the day he hit the home run, that's cool. It's amazing that a guy with that speed and that defensive prowess is able to have that level of power as well. But watching him go with that pitch, stay with his swing, take it the other way, and let his wheels start going. And like some days, certain ballparks too, like that's easily a triple for him.
For sure.
That one was where I'm like, man, if he can like dial in on that level of hitting, like he is really going to go to a different level. His floor is just so high. So I'm just a believer in that. Kyle Tucker is one of the best players in the league. So I think he, obviously ends up there. He would have been there last year in 70 games before he got hurt. That's how good he is. And Dansby, his defense just puts him there. You know, he's going to be a candidate to be in the top because of how well his defense rates.
And if he was playing with that core injury last year,
hopefully he's not playing through an injury like that, and he can be at least, slightly above league average hitter. And then he's a very valuable player. That's why he got the contract that he did.
Last question, then maybe you can sign off here because we're going overtime.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. More War, Michael Busch, Matt Shaw. It's a good one, right?
It is a good one.
It's a good question.
Oh, man, I'll go Michael Busch. Okay. I think again, I'm a big believer in Shaw, but I think what Busch showed on defense, I think, if he can continue to make those strides there, I think he's going to be a valuable defender. And, but that is one of the things I'm curious to see what they do there. Do they really unleash him against lefties and like see what happens there? He didn't have the best second half.
What does your gut tell you about that? Because I feel as if him playing against the lefties, they have Justin Turner. I feel as if you have to at least start with Turner.
Part of why I feel confident in Busch in that way. Like I feel like they have an adequate like
safety net kind of.
We talked about this with Shaw and like the reason that Bregman made sense, or just wanting like a really quality backup there, because then it allows Craig Counsell in the front office, however they're making these decisions, to say, you know what, like what are the best situations for Michael Busch in this scenario? And it's like, you know what, if we look at this matchup, like, sure, you want him in there. You want him trying to make adjustments and improve in different levels. He's young enough to still be doing those things. But there's also times where you go, you know what, this is a really tough matchup for him. Put Justin Turner in there. Let Justin Turner take a walk and hit a, double in the gap. Let Michael Busch take a day off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
And I feel like that's really valuable because you're going to be able to really prioritize not just what's best for the lineup on a given day, but really saying like, we feel good about the guy who can be in there if it's not Michael Busch. So
you love Justin Turner. You're the biggest Justin Turner Cubs fan in the world.
You're going to get me in trouble with my mom.
I'm going to have to text your mom.
I mean, she's going to be calling me like, what are you talking about him like that for? But you know what I mean? I feel like having a safety net behind Busch that is someone who, even if it's like, these last couple of years, like a 115, 116 WRC plus professional at bat type guy, you feel more comfortable in saying like, here's where we want Busch playing. Here's how we want him succeeding. And if there's a matchup or two where you're like, you know what, maybe today's not the day that we really challenge him to make adjustments against lefties, you feel confident in it. And I think that's I think that's to the betterment of him as well. So I'm confident in Shaw. I just think it's, it's tough to pick a guy at his age, a rookie, to in that question, in the way you asked it. It's like, I'm very confident in Shaw, but I think it's easy to just defer to a guy that I've at least seen do it at this level, at this point.
Yeah. There's no reason to believe it, but Busch, looking at his at-bats this spring, seeing how everything's a little bit more polished, and especially trampolining off the September he had, the past couple of weeks in September, you started seeing some some like breakthroughs. I feel like the power and the contact was starting to normalize within his range, I thought, and the defense improvement and having that just balloon significantly through the year. It does make me wonder, like, is he one of those players who can just adapt fast? And if that's the case, have I been undervaluing him? So among all the storylines this year, for me, I'm almost among the most intrigued by Michael Busch. And if first base is solved by Busch going forward, well, you have 4 years of team control, especially one more year pre-arb. That's so influential. It's almost as influential as we talk about filling the corner with Matt Shaw third base. So an equal amount of attention for me is given to Michael Busch as it is to Matt Shaw right now.
Yeah. And, just going back to like the overall thing, I think, look, we talked about it ad nauseum last year. They gave away so many games, There's no guarantee they don't do it again, but they feel like they're better situated in the bullpen, at least in terms of having a bevy of options to try and cycle through versus feeling like, well, they either lean on these 2 or 3 guys or they're screwed. They're going to have to be aggressive. They're going to have to make changes quickly. But you look at a team that gave away so many games last year, lost so many close games. And as we talked about all the time, felt like they didn't win on those little marginal things. I always, like to compare it to like getting loose balls in basketball. It felt like the Cubs lost so many of those little situations, making mistakes at the wrong time, making the wrong decision. Guy has his worst day in the bullpen on the wrong day. They're getting thrown out at home. They're doing that. And I feel like they've made efforts to clean that up as far as the way the roster's constructed. And, look, for as frustrating as last year was, it's always helpful to have a roadmap, right? Like they know what really screwed them over last year. It doesn't mean that you can avoid it entirely, but it's nice to kind of have an idea of like, hey, here's some of the things we did last year that really screwed us. And, in the last couple of years, we've only missed the playoffs by, a combined however many games. Like, probably need to tighten these things up. So
well, hopefully there's no new blind spots. That's the problem.
Sure.
So I'm still optimistic. Lots of good storylines. Third base, first base, center field, all pre-arb guys, all potentially 3+ WAR guys. I mean, that right there has to be the most important point in the Cubs' future that we've experienced in maybe since like 2015, 2016. So it feels like this is a turning point, if you will.
It does feel like there are a few, as you point out, like kind of really like potential. Franchise altering is such a strong word.
No. It's not.
They are.
It's franchise altering. You're talking about at PCA's peak, a 7-win player. That is franchise altering. Minimum.
Yeah.
We're going 10 wins. Yeah. We're going 10.
But it is, look, if you end the year in a position where you feel like Michael Busch is our first baseman, he's now proven that in 2 full seasons. PCA is the prospect everybody's dreamed of. He is, going to be putting himself in really serious award conversations, things like that. And Matt Shaw looks like the dude we all think he is, and he's going to be your third baseman. It is a franchise altering thing.
I mean, you're a 95-win team next year.
Those guys are cheap and they're here for a while.
You're pumping me up over there.
That would be a big deal. Yeah. And then you look at it too, like the thing, good thing, bad thing. I don't really know. Like we're going to have this like looming Kyle Tucker thing going on the whole year. But
is also, if those 3 guys are actually who they are, that's the pre-arb opens up the books. You can just, we hope that's how it works. Yeah, that's how it works for Jason Hayward.
If you're paying a lot less for great production in other spots, you can give Kyle Tucker what he needs to stay here. But it does feel in that way, like getting a sense of like how he's feeling about things, how he's performing at Wrigley Field. As I said, me, Cody, everyone else at Wrigley Field doing our job.
You in the bleachers.
No, but it's a whole stadium, Brendan. He needs to feel the love from that's the responsibility that I have,
That standing ovation will be pretty important. The very first one in April, Hopefully it's not too cold.
We have a role to play here from day one. We need that man to feel like he cannot leave. He has never played for fans like this. He cannot possibly leave the city of Chicago. And even if it saves Tom Ricketts $5, we'll have done our job, folks, in convincing Kyle Tucker.
He can do a lot with $5, Tom Ricketts.
Yeah. So overall, that would be the thing. I don't like, I'm sure we will. I'm saying I don't like to give a specific record prediction, but usually with CHGO, we all literally write down a record prediction. So I'm sure we'll do that at some point. But what I do believe earnestly is a diehard fan of this team that's obviously frustrated with how the last several years have gone. I believe they're better than they were last year. I believe they are a legitimate threat to be the best team in this division and win this division. And, sue me for saying so. I'm looking forward to Chicago Cubs baseball.
Oh my gosh. Look at you over there. You got 3 new posters in the background, a fresh new haircut, coming off a fresh birthday. You're living life. You're living large, my friend. Optimistic with the Cubs.
I think people know this. I've said this before, but Brendan, when you mentioned, I'm trying to find him. When you mentioned my birthday, if anyone is curious what year I'm in, if you're watching on YouTube, I'll say it, but there you go. 34, like my man, John Lester.
I thought you were going to put up a Kyle Schwarber picture because you share the same birthday,
but he's younger than me.
Oh, God. Isn't that weird that he's younger than you? It's weird.
Kind of. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You're 34. You're John Lester's birthday. That's what I should have told you. That's what I should have told you on the day. Damn. Missed out.
And listen.
Who's 35? Randall Simon?
I don't. Yeah, I guess. Yeah,
that's funny.
So anyway, I feel better about the team. We went all off season, and we talk about the stuff we wish they did differently in the off season, and we yell about where they're going to land in payroll coming into the year. That stuff doesn't go away. I still feel it, but at the end of the day, like once they're playing games, this is the team. This is the team. These are the 2025 Chicago Cubs, and I want them to succeed. And there's a lot of different ways that they can do that without some of those things that we, wanted all off season or wanted in past off seasons. And, come 5 o'clock in the morning next week, 3 o'clock for our guy Brendan here,
not happening.
It's time to root for the Cubs. Like that's what it comes down to. So we'll always kind of keep that larger, big picture conversation as part of things. It matters. It doesn't go away, but I feel better about this team than I did last year. And I just want them to make the playoffs. That's it. So that's what I want. I just want this team to make the playoffs.
That's not true. You get to the playoffs, you get swept, you'll be pissed off. Come on.
Oh, well, yeah, but I'm able to say that now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Right now that's a fair stake.
No, I mean, look, I think we all know this. Like anything short of them winning the World Series is just a nightmare. It's a total nightmare. It's every day of my life is just absolutely a nightmare because I'm never satisfied.
That's true. That's true. Oh my God, we're sick. We're sick people.
That's how it is. Yeah, but it's easy for me to say that now. Just make the playoffs. I'll be happy.
Yeah. I just want to have a competitive year.
Win 89 games, a fun summer at Wrigley Field.
I just want to be in the conversation. Yeah. We're idiots.
Not quite. Not quite.
No.
All right. So as I said, Brendan and I will be back with you next week. We'll probably have a little more get ready for the season, full 160 talk about.
Well, we got to see the full roster, the domestic opening day roster. A lot of important decisions.
But I did feel like we needed to get on record a little bit, like prior to actual games that count starting. So we'll pick this conversation up next week. As I said, don't miss Monday's episode with Luke and Cody. They have a very special guest, and I think you will enjoy it a lot. That's my tease. You should tune in. That's my advice. Beyond that, by the time we speak to you guys next, the Chicago Cubs will have a record. They'll have played games. Kyle Tucker will have played baseball officially for the Chicago Cubs. And I got to tell you, folks, I can't wait. I genuinely cannot wait.
God,
so let's see what the Tokyo series brings. We will talk to you again next week and break it all down and see how we feel. Are we panicking? Are we going to the World Series? I don't know, but we'll find out together. We'll talk to you again next week. Thank you for all your support. through this off season. This is the last time Brendan and I will talk to you through the off season. Slow episodes, some, weeks where the news was the same. You guys rode out the Alex Bregman saga with us week after week after week, all for a player that will probably never play for the Chicago Cubs in his entire career. But
Roki
you know what?
Sasaki.
That's what we do. So Thank you guys for the support. Thank you guys for tuning in. And let's go win a division, eh? Talk to you again next week. As always, go Cubs.
We all silly like the mayor.